knockers.
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
In 1974, a movie hit theaters that looked like it was beamed in from another era. It was in black and white, filled with creaky castles, lightning storms, wild-eyed scientists, and shadowy laboratories. It was a film that leaned into the world of gothic horror. But every line, every expression, every bizarre twist told you this was not just another monster movie. This was Young Frankenstein, the brainchild of Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder, and one of the most brilliantly weird comedies ever made. But the road to cinematic greatness wasn't easy. The studio hated the format. The title almost got scrapped. The most iconic scene was nearly thrown out. And somehow, a $3 million oddball comedy outperformed big-budget Hollywood hits. So how did a film about a reanimated corpse and a dancing doctor become a comedy legend, taught in film schools and preserved by the Library of Congress? This is the strange and true story of Young Frankenstein, filled with quirky facts, behind-the-scenes chaos, brilliant performances, and a love letter to horror that turned into something greater. Here are 20 jaw-dropping facts you've probably never heard. Let's saddle up.
Number 1.
From the moment Mel Brooks agreed to direct Young Frankenstein, he had a clear artistic vision. The film had to be black and white, and not just black and white as a visual gimmick. He wanted it to feel like an authentic 1930s Universal monster movie. He was recreating an entire cinematic language. The deep shadows, the flickering lights, the looming sets. Every frame needed to echo the original Frankenstein films. But the studio didn't get it. Executives at 20th Century Fox were confused and concerned. This was the mid-1970s, a time when Hollywood was pumping out vibrant modern blockbusters. Color was everything. The very idea of releasing a new black and white film felt like commercial suicide. They offered Mel Brooks a bigger budget if he would reconsider. They even suggested a strange compromise: shoot in color and convert to black and white in post-production. But to Brooks, that would defeat the purpose. He said, in effect, if you force me to use color, I walk. It wasn't just about the look. It was about respecting the source. Brooks and Wilder weren't mocking those old horror films. They were honoring them with style, tone, and structure that mirrored the originals. The parody only worked if it felt authentic. Eventually, the studio relented with one odd demand. They would allow the film to be black and white, but nobody was allowed to mention that in the advertising. So the trailers didn't say a word. The posters didn't reveal it. Audiences went in expecting a standard comedy and found something else. And that visual decision, it paid off. Young Frankenstein became a visual masterpiece. Not retro, but rebellious. It proved that creativity, not color, made a movie timeless.
Number 2.
It's one of the most memorable moments in the film. The monster and Dr. Frankenstein in tuxedos, singing and dancing to Puttin on the Ritz. It's absurd, it's theatrical, it's unforgettable, and it almost didn't happen. Mel Brooks originally hated the idea. He thought it was too far removed from the tone of the film, too stagey, too strange, and too long. He was worried it would derail the pacing, and that audiences would be confused by this sudden musical detour. Gene Wilder, on the other hand, believed in it. To him, the number was more than a gag. It was the culmination of the movie's theme. Here was the monster, rejected and feared, finally being presented to the world, not as a horror, but as an entertainer. It was silly, yes, but also a moment of strange triumph. The two argued for days. Brooks pleaded with Wilder to cut it. Wilder, normally calm and collaborative, stood his ground. He insisted it stay in. Eventually, Brooks gave in and agreed to film it. And when he saw the final take, full costume, full lighting, full absurdity, his opinion completely changed. He turned to Wilder and admitted, "It's the best thing in the movie." That one scene, born out of creative tension, became an instant classic. It's not just a funny moment, it's a turning point in the story, and one of the reasons the film is still loved today.
Number 3.
On paper, Mel Brooks ran a tight set. He had a script, a vision, and years of directing experience. But he also had Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman, two actors who couldn't help but break the rules. During shooting, Wilder and Feldman constantly whispered together between takes. They'd tweak dialogue, invent new deliveries, and even rewrite entire bits of business. Feldman especially was a wild card. He had a natural gift for absurd comedy and a habit of throwing surprises into his performances. At one point, he showed up to film a scene with a completely new accent, one he hadn't rehearsed, one that wasn't in the script. He just did it. The crew erupted in laughter. Brooks at first was furious, but when he saw the playback, something clicked. It worked, not just as a joke, but as a character moment. Feldman's chaos made the film more alive, so Brooks made a decision. He stopped fighting the improvisation. He let Wilder and Feldman play, because it wasn't just funny, it was working. And that creative freedom brought the movie to life in ways nobody expected.
Number 4.
Peter Boyle gave a performance that was both haunting and hilarious as the monster. A role with very few words, but incredible expression. But under that towering makeup, Boyle was going through a physical ordeal every day. The monster makeup took several hours to apply, involving latex prosthetics, fake scars, rubber adhesives, and layer after layer of glue. Under the harsh studio lights, the materials would melt. His prosthetic forehead would sag. The scars would literally slide down his face mid-scene. At times, the crew had to stop everything, rush Boyle to a fan, and rebuild the entire look from scratch. And yet, Boyle never complained. He stayed in character. He danced in a tuxedo. He groaned, stumbled, flailed, all while sweating gallons under 30 pounds of costume and makeup. His performance didn't just make the monster funny, it made him oddly human. It gave the film its heart, and it showed that even in a comedy, commitment matters.
Number 5.
When you think of Igor, you probably picture the classic hunchback assistant, eyes wide, grin crooked, and of course, a large hump on his back. But Young Frankenstein's Igor, played by Marty Feldman, had a twist, literally. Watch closely in the movie, and you'll notice something strange. In one scene, his hump is on the right. In the next, it's on the left. Sometimes it disappears altogether. At first, viewers might assume it was a mistake, a continuity error, a slip-up in makeup. But no, it was intentional. Marty Feldman started moving the hump between scenes as a joke, and he never told anyone. Not the makeup crew, not Mel Brooks, not even Gene Wilder. He just did it, quietly, rebelliously. Eventually, someone on set caught on. Wait a minute, wasn't that on the other side? When Mel Brooks found out, he didn't get mad. He laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. And rather than correct it, he told the editors to leave it in. It was a perfect, bizarre little gag. Never explained, never acknowledged. Just another moment of weird genius that helped make the movie feel alive and unpredictable.
Number 6.
Cloris Leachman didn't walk into Young Frankenstein trying to be funny. She approached her role, Frau Blücher, the stern housekeeper, like she was in a serious drama. Her delivery was cold, sharp, oddly formal. Her accent sounded vaguely European, but not from any country you could point to on a map. But that exact seriousness is what made her hilarious. She wasn't mugging for the camera. She wasn't playing for laughs. She was simply being. Every time she entered a scene, the atmosphere changed. Her stare could stop a clock, and the other actors, they couldn't keep it together. Gene Wilder would lose his composure mid-line. Teri Garr had to turn away. Even the camera operators were laughing behind the lens. And yet, they didn't ask Cloris to pull it back. Instead, they shot around the laughter, cutting between takes, doing whatever it took to preserve her performance exactly as it was. And what came through was one of the most unforgettable characters in comedy. Not because she tried to be funny, but because she didn't.
Number 7.
Originally, the studio had someone else in mind for the role of Inga, Dr. Frankenstein's charming lab assistant. They wanted someone with a classical look, a dramatic actress who could elevate the film with elegance. But things weren't clicking. There were creative disagreements behind the scenes, about the tone, about the direction, even about how funny the role should be. With the camera crew prepping for production, the casting team was scrambling. That's when Gene Wilder made a quiet but game-changing suggestion. Let's bring in Teri Garr. She wasn't the studio's top choice, but she didn't need a formal audition. She walked in with zero pressure and nailed it. She wasn't playing a dumb assistant. She played Inga like someone in on the joke. Her performance was sincere, playful, even sweet, and she had razor-sharp timing. Mel Brooks watched her read through in silence. Then he smiled and said, "That's her. Cancel the rest." Teri Garr didn't just get the role, she defined it.
Number 8.
Picture this: Gene Wilder, taking a break from filming, goes to play tennis. Across the court is someone unexpected, Gene Hackman, the Oscar-winning star of The French Connection. They chat between serves. Hackman says something casual. You know, I've always wanted to try a comedy. Just once. Wilder, always quick on his feet, says, "Funny you mention that, I've got a part." That moment led to one of the funniest and most surprising cameos in film history. Hackman played the blind hermit who offers soup, wine, and comfort to the lonely monster. The entire scene was shot in one day. In it, Hackman burns Peter Boyle's hand, pours soup on his lap, and accidentally destroys his own furniture, all delivered with dead serious sincerity. It was unexpected. It was unforgettable. And it proved that even a dramatic legend like Hackman could absolutely crush a comedy scene.
Number 9.
Mel Brooks is known for putting himself in his films. In Blazing Saddles, he played multiple characters. Same in Spaceballs. He loved cameos, but not in Young Frankenstein. Gene Wilder asked him not to appear. The goal was to make the film feel like a real 1930s horror movie. No modern faces, no winks to the audience, no distractions. Brooks agreed, but that doesn't mean he was completely gone. He lent his voice to the soundscape. That wolf howl in the distance, that screeching cat, that train in the background, all Mel Brooks. So technically, his face isn't on screen, but listen closely, and you'll hear him everywhere.
Number 10.
One of the coolest facts about Young Frankenstein, the lab equipment, the coils, the sparks, the spinning dials, was real. It wasn't a replica. It wasn't a prop. It was the original equipment used in the 1931 Frankenstein film. Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder wanted authenticity, so they tracked down Kenneth Strickfaden, the original designer of the lab set. He still had the gear, packed away in his garage, dusty but functional. They brought it to the set, cleaned it up, and plugged it in. When the lightning flashes in Young Frankenstein, you're seeing actual cinema history brought back to life. And that's not parody, that's resurrection.
Number 11.
Creating a storm on a soundstage in the 1970s wasn't easy. There were no CGI effects, no post-production rain. If you wanted lightning, thunder, and wind, you had to build it. And that's exactly what the crew did. They built wind machines, wired water tanks for fake rain, and synced it all with massive light rigs to create the illusion of a thunderstorm. It looked incredible until it went too far. One night, the water pressure overloaded. The set started flooding, ankle deep. Equipment shorted out, lights sizzled, sparks flew. For a moment, it looked like the lab scene would be delayed for days. But the crew worked all night, dried everything out, repaired the systems, and by morning, they were rolling again. Controlled chaos, barely.
Number 12.
One of the most famous gags in the film. Every time someone says Frau Blücher, horses shriek in terror. It's strange. It's surreal. It's hilarious. But there's a story behind it. Mel Brooks later explained that it came from a real person from his childhood. A woman who, for reasons he never fully understood, absolutely terrified him. So he added the gag not just for laughs, but as a symbol of how a name alone can carry power. The horse's reaction became one of the most iconic sound cues in comedy history. Absurd on the surface, but rooted in something personal. That's the magic of Brooks' humor. It's weird, but it's always grounded in real emotion.
Number 13.
To Gene Wilder, the name Young Frankenstein was perfect. It captured everything. The lineage to the classic monster movies, the ironic twist, the idea that this wasn't the original Frankenstein, but his descendant. But the studio didn't get it. They thought it sounded slow, too bookish, too confusing. They proposed names like Son of Frankenstein, The Comedy, or Frankenstein Returns. Wilder was furious. He told Mel Brooks, if they change the title, I walk. It was one of the few times he got genuinely angry during production. And in the end, the studio backed off. Because Wilder was right. Sometimes the weirdest titles are the ones people remember forever.
Number 14.
There's a scene in Young Frankenstein where Igor, played by Marty Feldman, hands a cane to Dr. Frankenstein and says, "Walk this way." The doctor imitates Igor's limp, and it's a quick, goofy laugh. Years later, fans began to speculate that this moment inspired the Aerosmith hit song Walk This Way. Did it really? The band hasn't officially confirmed it, but the timing? Suspiciously close. Even if it's just a coincidence, it shows how a simple throwaway gag can echo far beyond the film itself, maybe even into rock history.
Number 15.
Young Frankenstein didn't rely on crude jokes. Most of its humor came from timing, absurdity, and parody. But there was one line near the end that caused a rating scare. The Motion Picture Association flagged it as suggestive, even though it was clearly a callback joke, not graphic or explicit. Mel Brooks was stunned. He fought for the line, explaining it was a reference to earlier scenes and had no harmful intent. It took 3 rounds of discussions, but eventually, the film kept its PG rating. A small battle won, but a reminder that even a comedy needs to fight for its punchline sometimes.
Number 16.
Nobody at the studio expected Young Frankenstein to make much money. It had no flashy trailers, no celebrity gossip buzz. It was black and white. It was weird. It wasn't part of any franchise. But then the reviews came in, and the audiences, they came back again and again. By the end of its run, the movie had earned over $80 million on a budget of just under $3 million. It outperformed bigger films with more stars and way more marketing. It wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon.
Number 17.
Here's how good the film's style was. Some viewers genuinely thought it was a real 1930s sequel to Frankenstein. Older audience members wrote letters saying they remembered seeing it as children. Others thought it was a lost film that had finally been restored. Mel Brooks never corrected them, because the goal wasn't just to spoof those old movies, it was to live inside them. And in that sense, mission accomplished.
Number 18.
The Oscar loss that was still a victory. When Young Frankenstein was released in 1974, it quickly became a fan favorite. Smart, stylish, and laugh-out-loud funny. What surprised many was that it also caught the attention of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Despite being a black and white parody of old horror films, the movie earned 2 Oscar nominations. Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Sound for a Screwball Comedy about a tap-dancing monster. That was a huge deal. But when awards night came, Young Frankenstein didn't win either category. Both awards went to The Towering Inferno, a big-budget disaster film more in line with what the Academy typically honored. Still, the nominations alone said a lot. Comedy has always had a tough time at the Oscars. Dramas dominate awards season. They're seen as serious, artistic, and important. Comedies, no matter how clever or well-made, are often treated like lightweight entertainment. But Young Frankenstein broke that mold. Its screenplay, written by Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks, didn't just parody horror, it respected it. It had real structure, character arcs, and a deep understanding of classic cinema. The dialogue was sharp, the pacing precise. It was more than a collection of gags. It was a real story, told with care. And that's why the Academy took notice. The Best Sound nomination was also well earned. The film wasn't just visually styled like a 1930s horror movie. It sounded like one too. Wolves howled, thunder crashed, laboratory machines buzzed with electricity. The sound design didn't just create atmosphere, it made the jokes land harder. A creaky door or sudden scream added tension, which made the punchlines hit even harder. Even the smallest gags, like the horses shrieking every time someone said Frau Blücher, were sound-based jokes, delivered with perfect timing. Neither Mel Brooks nor Gene Wilder seemed upset by the loss. In interviews, Wilder simply said, "We were honored they even noticed us." And that attitude says it all. They didn't set out to win Oscars. They set out to make something original, something they loved, and something that made people laugh. In the end, that's what they did. Young Frankenstein didn't need an Academy Award to become a classic. It's still watched, quoted, studied, and adored decades later. It was eventually preserved by the Library of Congress as a film of cultural significance, something only a small number of comedies have ever achieved. So yes, it lost the Oscar, but it won something bigger, a permanent place in film history. And that's the kind of recognition that lasts forever.
Number 19.
From parody to national treasure. Nearly 3 decades after Young Frankenstein hit theaters, something remarkable happened. In 2003, the United States Library of Congress officially added the film to the National Film Registry, declaring it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. That might sound academic, but it's a huge honor. Only 25 films are added to the registry each year, and they're chosen from thousands of titles spanning over a century of cinema. This wasn't just about preserving a reel of film. It was about recognizing that Young Frankenstein had become a permanent piece of American culture. The registry is usually filled with legendary dramas, groundbreaking documentaries, or genre-defining epics. Comedies, especially broad, zany ones, rarely make the cut. But Young Frankenstein stood out because it wasn't just funny. It was meticulous. It was crafted with love for the genre it parodied. It captured a unique moment in film history when Hollywood was shifting, and did it with both humor and heart. It also represented something deeper, an example of how creativity thrives when artists take risks. A black and white monster comedy in the era of big-budget Technicolor spectacles? That's about as risky as it gets. And it worked. The Library of Congress doesn't just preserve movies, it preserves memory. It recognized that Young Frankenstein had transcended parody. It had become a part of how people remember movies, laugh about them, and even learn from them. Students study it in film classes. Comedians point to it as inspiration. Directors still borrow from its style, and it continues to connect with new audiences, generation after generation. Not because it chased trends, but because it captured something timeless. Mel Brooks once joked that he made Young Frankenstein because he loved monsters. But the truth is, he made it because he loved storytelling and understood how humor could be powerful, smart, and lasting. So while the film began as a tribute to 1930s horror, it ended up becoming a piece of history itself. Not bad for a movie with a tap-dancing monster.
Number 20.
When filming wrapped, the cast didn't just pack up and go home. They held a mock funeral for the movie. Candles, eulogies, speeches in character. They mourned their characters, joked about the shoot, and reflected on what they'd created. It was silly. It was sweet. It was perfectly Young Frankenstein. Because the film wasn't just a parody. It was a once-in-a-lifetime project. A weird, wonderful lightning bolt of creativity. And when it ended, they gave it the farewell it deserved.
Bonus.
After production ended, Mel Brooks didn't take home a script or a set photo. He took the monster's boots, big, heavy, towering things that threw off Peter Boyle's balance during filming. Why? They make me feel taller and funnier. If you enjoyed this ride through movie history, do us a favor. Tap that like button, hit subscribe for more deep dives into film history, and tell us in the comments,